Melinda and I are preparing for this work party that she's got coming up this week, and so I had to get the retro gaming station set up down here as part of the general cleaning of our house. And while I was at it, I was doing a lot of thinking, and I don't normally talk about modern movies. I don't do movie reviews, and I don't get caught up in the current brouhaha on the YouTube channel. But this weekend was kind of a fist fight amongst a lot of people. I'm not above that. I'm not saying, oh, I was way up here and I was out of it. I was in the middle of it as well. But it sort of made me pause, and I wanted to address it because I felt like, well, I'm seeing two sides of an argument, and I'm seeing the two sides wage the battle in two very specific ways. And I think in both instances, they're just continuing to inflame each other. And so I wanted to throw my hat in the ring on this one because it's an important point for everybody who's into pop culture and everybody who's into science fiction and nostalgia. Solo. The movie came out this weekend. This is not a movie review. RetroBlasting is not about to get into movie reviews. This is not a positive statement about the movie or a negative statement about the movie. I haven't seen the film, so I wouldn't be so unethical as to review a film I haven't seen. But Solo is sort of the eye of the storm for what's going on. And here's what I'm seeing. The box office is low right now. The box office has been impacted. Back about 6 months ago, Last Jedi comes out. And I did not go to the theater to see it. I saw a copy later. But I did not go to the theater to see it because I had found out what happened to Luke Skywalker. And I felt like in the wake of what they had done with Han Solo in The Force Awakens, I was not going to go see The Last Jedi. That is not what I wanted to see. That's not how I am entertained, is by watching classic characters die one movie after another, especially in the wake of Carrie Fisher. But as you know, I didn't talk about that on YouTube because I didn't feel like that was my place, and it's not what we all want to do, and I certainly wouldn't do that because I'm not about movie reviews, and this is not a movie review either. But I said to my friends online who were duking it out over the film, I reminded them that up until now, Star Wars films have not been so creatively divisive. Example, George Lucas didn't come out in statements after the prequels, despite the fact that a lot of people didn't like the prequels. George Lucas didn't come out in public statements and say that, the fans just need to get over themselves and the fans have a lot of pent-up prejudices and bigotry and all that kind of stuff. And that was because George Lucas was working on a higher plane. George Lucas was trying to create something out of his own mind. It was his universe. It was his vision. It was the mythology he was drawing from and messages he wanted to impart. And so he literally had risen above all that. I don't think he would have ever considered doing that at the time. This is somewhat different. RetroBlasting is not a political channel, and we're never going to be. What I have noticed is a lot of politics being thrown around from both the fan base toward Lucasfilm and Lucasfilm toward the fan base. There is a vocal group of the fans that are upset about the direction of Lucasfilm since The Force Awakens. And they are couching their arguments in politics because Lucasfilm has couched its criticisms of the fan base in politics. I guess the crazy part about this is the fans who are using politics have also brought up the more legitimate point, which is that the script writing for Star Wars is not up to snuff the way it used to be. And the company, the parent company, Lucasfilm, the creators at the top, the representatives that were outward facing to the public, they are also using political rhetoric in their responses to these fans. They're generalizing. They're not taking into account that there are women who are upset with these movies as well. You can look on YouTube and find a number of YouTube movie reviewers who are female who are not happy. And so there's a war of political rhetoric going back and forth using Star Wars as a battleground. I have often found that the politics, when politics gets involved, you can almost guarantee that there's no imagination left in that discussion. And imagination is the discussion, because George Lucas was one of the most imaginary, visionary men who ever walked the earth, and thank goodness he still continues to walk the earth. They have inherited this from him, and they're frankly not all that creative. They're having some creative problems. What's interesting here is that this maelstrom that has occurred this weekend has very little to do with Solo itself as a movie. 6 months ago, Last Jedi became the most divisive Star Wars movie ever put to film. And the company that made it came out and tripled down on defending it against the fans who were critical of it. They blanketed every single fan that didn't like it as a political troll, and that is actually a very dangerous thing to do, because there were a lot of people out there who weren't bringing in the political rhetoric. They were simply saying this wasn't a very good movie and it did a lot of things to the mythology and the characters that I love that I don't agree with. I told people then on social media and other channels, through my personal channels, because I have a lot of friends who are into this stuff and we have these discussions, and I said, guys, because these were people who I know who loved The Last Jedi or liked it, or they were okay with it in some form. And I said, whether you're okay with it or not, and I know you think that because it's making a respectable amount of money right now, that somehow validates your position on the film. I said, taking the politics out of it, taking the rhetoric out of these disparate arguments going on between Lucasfilm and a smaller group, a smaller pie slice of the fans who are, what they share with the broader group is that they don't like these movies. What they use to express their dislike is a more specialized rhetoric, if you will. What I told my friends at the time was, it doesn't matter that this movie has made a respectable amount of money now. It's the next movie where Lucasfilm is going to get smacked. And I said, and I didn't go see Last Jedi because I don't want to give Disney money right now for Star Wars. I'm happy to go see Marvel films, but I'm not going to go see Star Wars because I don't like the creative direction where it's going. And it has nothing to do with politics for me. I told them, I said, this will be Tomb Raider 2 all over again. Solo will be Tomb Raider 2. It doesn't matter that it will be a better movie than The Last Jedi. And I said, with Ron Howard on board, it will be a better movie than The Last Jedi by default. There's no questioning that. That doesn't matter, because the fan base, the paying customer at this point, has finally had enough. Not just the political people, but the people that just love Star Wars for being Star Wars. They've had enough. The perception is that Lucasfilm does not care about the legacy fan base anymore, because the new leadership that has come in has no imagination, and you can tell they have no imagination because they're using politics in their arguments on the what do you call it? on television, in interviews, and in print, in journalism. Every interview they give, they are bringing politics into the discussion just as much as some people online who are mad at them. Solo is a milestone in Star Wars history because of this, because of all of this. I wish that Solo was a milestone because it was embraced by everybody and everybody went to see it and it was an amazing movie and, you know, it was the next record setter. But the fact is that we are in a reality that we have to make peace with. And I'm making peace with it because I tried to tell people in my personal life 6 months ago, this is happening. Whether or not you want to believe it is irrelevant. The path has been laid and we're going to walk this yellow brick road and we're not ending up in Emerald City for a while. We're going to end up at the witch's castle. And they were like, no, Star Wars is great. Star Wars is fine. I'm like, you're not looking at it from a business perspective. You're looking at it from a Pollyanna. I want to believe what I want to believe because I want my thing to be great. I want my franchise to be awesome. You've got to start divorcing yourself from the idea that a franchise that you're a fan of determines your personal value. And if you stop liking that or you stop financially supporting it, then somehow you've betrayed your spouse. It doesn't equate and it's not healthy, okay? The fact is that Solo was the next product after a very toxic product from Lucasfilm. Now, if you're in the group of people that liked Last Jedi, then I'm going to tell you right now, you're not wrong for your opinion, but you are wrong to ignore the signs of the vast majority of fans who were burned by that movie. And I also firmly believe that most of them, like myself, were not burned for political reasons. They were burned because of terrible storytelling. Very bad and arrogant decision-making on the part of the people in charge at Lucasfilm. That's where the rubber meets the road, guys. That beyond that, it doesn't matter. Example. George Lucas, historically, pretty liberal guy, politically, right? Makes movies that everybody loves. He's also made a few movies that people didn't really like. But by and large, when you walked into a theater to a George Lucas movie, didn't matter what your political background was, you walked out and you could have a conversation with people from any other political background about it. And everybody was just talking about the story. They were talking about the characters. That's not what's happened this time, okay? We're walking out of here and we're going, this story was so bad, okay? For a lot of people, this Last Jedi story was so jaw-droppingly insulting and didn't even make good business sense to do what they did. Certainly didn't help the logical narrative flow even off the last movie. And I know I was in the minority on Force Awakens. I admit that I was one of the few that didn't like it, and I recognize that. A lot of people liked it. That was fine. But it didn't even flow off Force Awakens logically, okay? It wasn't well written, it wasn't well constructed, it wasn't well structured, it didn't characterize people properly. The majority of people felt that way. And if you liked The Last Jedi, I'm glad that you weren't upset when you saw it, but you have to understand that a lot of people didn't like it. It is very possible, given what's happened with Solo this weekend, that the fan base has spoken. Both the political side of the fan base and the non-political, I just want a good Star Wars story side of the fan base that does justice to the characters and does justice to the universe and all that kind of stuff. The Last Jedi was that toxic. And a lot of us were like, and I was already burned by Force Awakens. I didn't even go pay for Last Jedi. So I was one step removed from even this. But a lot of people, Last Jedi was the straw that broke the camel's back, okay? So a lot of fans right now who still love all this stuff, the Disney stuff, they're in a state of denial. And they're saying, no, Star Wars is still super strong and Star Wars is great and everything's going to be fine, because they don't want to consider the possibility that their beloved franchise is in trouble. When Tomb Raider 2 came out, Tomb Raider 2 was a better movie than Tomb Raider 1. But it didn't matter because Tomb Raider 1 was so bad, nobody went back to see Tomb Raider 2. And it bombed at the box office, and then the franchise fizzled. Okay? Same thing happened with Star Trek Beyond. Star Trek Beyond was a better movie than Star Trek Into Darkness. But everybody was so burned by Star Trek Into Darkness, they didn't go back to see Star Trek Beyond. And now the Star Trek movie franchise is in a little bit of a flux. They don't know how it's going to proceed. When Ghostbusters 2016 was coming out and the trailer had a very negative response to it, the first mistake that Sony made was getting their directors and stars to go out there on TV interviews and tell everybody that the people disliking the trailer were all sexists and racists and dinosaurs and all this kind of stuff. They were generalizing. Okay, there are a lot of dyed-in-the-wool, lifelong Ghostbusters fans that didn't have any problem with the casting or the director or anything like that. They just watched the trailer and said, "Wow, this isn't funny. The jokes aren't funny, and Ghostbusters is supposed to be funny because it's a comedy." That's all they were thinking. So then when they were told retroactively by the creators in the months leading up to the movie, no, the reason you don't like it is because you're over here with this group of people, and you're awful, and you're probably a man, and you're probably this and that. It's like, wow, guys, you're sitting here saying that you're fighting for equality and you're fighting for inclusion, but you're over here marginalizing an entire group of people. You don't even know what they look like. You don't even know what their genders are. You don't even really know their reasons. Lucasfilm, unfortunately, is in a perfect storm because it has done both, okay? First off, it has made a movie that was so divisive and poorly constructed that nobody wanted to go and see the next one, no matter what that product was. So you've already got Solo in the Tomb Raider 2 position here. Now you combine that with the very poor PR strategy that Sony enacted for Ghostbusters 2016, which is politicizing the angry fans, making them you're generalizing who they are, you're marginalizing them at the same time without knowing what they look like, knowing their background, really taking into account their reasons. You have both of those going on at the same time with Lucasfilm. So of course Solo is doomed, and Episode 9 is now doomed out ahead of it. I know that there's a group of you out there that are saddened by this. You want every Star Wars thing to be great, and you probably think these movies are great, and you're angry at the people who don't like these movies. You might even think from all the chatter out there that everybody that doesn't like these movies is politicized, and that's just not true. I'm not politicized when it comes to that. I have it down to a more basic level, which is these people don't have an imagination and they're making very bad creative decisions. Okay? Clint Eastwood was very conservative politically, and I like many of his movies and I dislike some of his movies. But it's because when he focuses on making a movie, he's making a movie. Whether he's acting in it or directing it, he's just trying to tell a good story. And then you can walk away and discuss the story like we all used to with Star Wars. And Lucas did the same thing as I just said earlier. It really comes down to that. It really doesn't matter, unfortunately, and that's where Kathleen Kennedy, I think, has lost her way. She doesn't have an imagination, and she traditionally has not been part of the story development side of filmmaking, and she's very wrapped up in, apparently, from her own vocalization online, she's very wrapped up in her politics. And like I said, when you get wrapped up in your politics, there's not much room left for imagination. So she's hurting herself. I won't deny that. But from where I'm standing, I really don't care what her politics are if she was churning out good movies with good stories and picking good directors and all that kind of stuff. I really don't care what her politics are. And that's really the short end of it, is that, you know, the Marvel studios, they're picking directors from all over the place to make all these different movies. And there is no such thing out there as Marvel fatigue. Right now, the journalism is trying to tell us that, oh, it's because of Star Wars fatigue that Solo did so poorly. No, it's not. It's because the audience has spoken and the fans have said, we are going to take this back. We are going to do what we have to do. And we are not going to give our money, because our money is our vote. That's the only vote you get, is your money. And it's like, we're not going to go see all this anymore because we don't like what they're doing to our characters and our universe. And it's working, apparently. And I think the funniest part is that a fan base that's rabid and apologist loves to think in their minds that they control Star Wars, they support it, and all this kind of stuff, until it doesn't work in their favor, until they look around and go, oh my God, the majority of the fan base isn't with me anymore, or were they ever? Well, you're going to have to reconcile that in your own mind. I'm just glad to see that Disney, Lucasfilm, I shouldn't say Disney, I should really say Lucasfilm. Lucasfilm is not being rewarded as much anymore for their work on Star Wars, because we know that Rian Johnson's been given another entire trilogy. We know that he said to Mark Hamill that we shouldn't care about the fans. We know that J.J. Abrams has been brought back to do Episode 9. They tried to announce the day of Solo. They tried to announce a Boba Fett movie. Look over here, which is the same thing they did back when, I think it was right before Last Jedi, they announced another film, or a Rian Johnson trilogy, I think it was. Their tactics are very bad, and they're being used to smokescreen from what's really happening behind the scenes. And finally, the majority of the movie-going public and the majority of the fan base has said no more. It's only going to be a very zealotous small slice of the fan base that will like whatever has a Star Wars logo on it and won't give up. But they are not the majority. The majority of us are the people that made Star Wars a success in 1977. We want good storytelling. We want good characters of any race and gender. I do not know why that has become a thing with both the fan base over here and Lucasfilm over here. That's never been a factor for me. I don't care. It's time to accept the fact that Star Wars is not invincible. It is not an invincible franchise. And if they keep doing what they're doing, the vast majority of the movie-going public is going to keep ignoring their products. That's as simple as I know how to put it. And the proof is in Solo this weekend. And it will also continue into Episode 9, because that is the direct continuation of a movie that has painted Star Wars single-handedly into a corner. This has nothing to do with Solo's quality. It has nothing to do with a damning statement about Solo as a bad movie or as a good movie. It doesn't even matter. I haven't seen it, because I won't give Lucasfilm my money until I hear what I heard DC say a few months back, which is when DC came up and said, we've gotten rid of Zack Snyder and we've gotten this other guy, and he's promising that these movies will finally have hope and optimism. And so I'm waiting for the first non-Zack Snyder stained DC movie, and I'll give it a shot. I did not go see Justice League. I did not go see Batman vs. Superman. I did go see Wonder Woman because it had, or I didn't go see it, I saw it on disc, because it had a different director that wasn't Zack Snyder. And guess what? That movie turned out okay. But you guys who are angry at people like myself for not going, don't assume for a minute that we're political. I'm not political about this situation. I'm looking at it from the business perspective. And everything that has occurred since Last Jedi is exactly what I thought would happen. And I'm not Nostradamus. I'm just connecting the dots. And right now, I'm okay with those dots. I would rather have Star Wars die on its feet than live on its knees. I'm serious. And unfortunately, I'm noticing that a lot of people don't see it that way. They'd rather have Star Wars on life support just so that they can stare at the living corpse and go, oh, I'm so glad it's still here. And the rest of us are going, why are you wasting your time and money staring at this corpse? Anyway, hope you've enjoyed your hot dogs and everything this Memorial Day weekend. I just had to sort of weigh in on this because I felt like a lot of the weighing in was political. And my point of view is purely from a storytelling, screenwriting perspective. The Lucasfilm creative team are not doing themselves any favors right now. They need to clean house because they're not creative. They're not good storytellers, and that's what it boils down to. It has nothing to do with, oh, well, these angry fans are political, or, oh, well, Kathleen Kennedy and her people are political. They might very well be, but it wouldn't matter if they were telling great stories. If they were getting out of their own way and telling great stories, these people wouldn't be accusing them of this, and they wouldn't be accusing these people of that. But they're just both throwing politics back and forth, and I just wanted to be the one person to stand up and say, hey, it's not politics that's the problem here. It's the writing. Your writing sucks, Lucasfilm. It's bad. And your directors that you choose are bad. And what you've done with the characters is possibly irreversible at this point. So good luck with episode 9, but I think what you're seeing with Solo is just going to continue into next year. Because we know J.J. Abrams is attached. We know Kathleen Kennedy's still in charge. We know Rian Johnson still has another trilogy where he can smugly look at all of us and say, I don't care about fans. And as he said in that video from several years back, I want 50% of the audience to hate my movie every time. You're getting your wish, because it's fast becoming that 50% of the audience hates Lucasfilm as an entity. And until Disney steps up to the plate and that board of directors steps up and goes, you know what? Hey, Mr. Iger, we probably need to take care of that Lucasfilm situation over there. Marvel's going to get my money, but not Lucasfilm for the foreseeable future. So make peace with it. If you like these movies, make peace with it, because it's not ending anytime soon. Not until they apologize like DC did and turn the ship around publicly. So we'll see you on the next video.